So once reaching the lake, Lake Harriet, if you go this way, you will be heading towards the Sandstone Canyon Loop and also Boulder Dam Jr. If you go to the right, you'll see this trail which leads up to the actual Overlook. And again, the rangers would like to remind you to please stay on the trail. If you go off the trail, you can be fined up to $600, which is a lot to pay for a visit to this park. Now, this path over here leads down what we used to call the Plant Trail. And it descends through a variety of Mojave Desert plants back to the road leading to the ranch house. So let's go this way because we want to get to the top of the Overlook. So as we come up the rise, you are beginning to see the Wilson Family Cemetery. And as you pan around, this is where we started, with the lake in the background. So back onto the trail. Now we are approaching the Wilson Cemetery. And whenever you come up here, you should solemnly pay your respects to the Wilson family. The headstone in the back, which is a VA military type headstone, marks the gravesite of James B. Wilson, Sr., the man who started it all in 1876 by filing for a homestead on the ranch. All of the other graves, there are 5 in all, represent the Wilson men. Where the little flowers are, that is where Boone is buried, and James B. Wilson was his grandfather. On the other side of Wilson's gravesite is Buster, or Russell Wilson. Again, grandfather. Over here is Jim Jr., his adopted son. And on the other side is the gravesite for Tweed Wilson, or George Anderson T. Wilson. The only people that have access to this particular cemetery plot are the park rangers and the Paiute families from Boone Wilson. And if you need another reminder of the Wilson family, there is signage here that will give some of their history, and it's arranged according to the burial plots. The other significance of this cemetery is this may be the only remaining family cemetery in the Las Vegas Valley. In the pioneer days, when grandpa or grandma passed on, you just put them in the backyard somewhere, a little bit of a distance from the house, just as the Wilsons have done here. However, over time, many of those burial plots were closed and the bodies transferred to the main cemetery in downtown Las Vegas. Continuing on up the trail, as you can see, the trail goes forward and then curves around to go to the top of that hill. And remember, even though you see this, stay on the trail. Don't go that way. We see lots of banana yucca, Mormon tea, black brush, Mojave yucca, then this starts the uphill climb to the top of the Overlook. So that now look at the nature of this trail. Everything we saw before appeared to be the result of weathering of sandstone, but this is different. First, it's brown in color, and it seems to be a rock with a lot of pebbles in them. So something has changed just on this hill. The significance of this brown rock is that it is a different rock formation in the geologic stratigraphy. This is the Shinarump formation. And as we look at this particular hill, which is Indecision Peak, at the top is Aztec sandstone. Then below that, where that red layer first takes shape, and it looks like there have been lines drawn in it, that's the Kayenta layer. Below that is the Chinle petrified forest layer. So that usually this Shinarump formation lies under the Chinle petrified forest formation and above the Moenkopi formation. So if you turn to the southeast along the trail, you will soon be coming to the Overlook. From the Overlook, from the west, you have a view of the Sandstone Canyon and the Velvet Peaks. Then moving on around from the Velvet Peaks is Lake Harriet, right down there in the center, which is presently being refilled. Then continuing around, one has a view of the reservoir, the old reservoir that the Wilsons used, and you see the bridge across the inlet to the Wilson Reservoir that we crossed yesterday when we were exploring the plant trail. Those white buildings across the way, some of them are residences of the park rangers. The building in the center in this view is the foreman's house. They call it the foreman's house, but indeed the foreman did not live there. It has that sandstone base because one of the springs were piped through there in order to keep produce and other food relatively cool, especially in the summertime. Just to the right of the foreman's house is the cowboy or cowhand house, where some of the ranch hands lived. Then moving over to that long building there, which looks like a shed, is the hay barn. Just to the right of the hay barn is another elongated building, which is the chicken coop. And just behind that, which you cannot see very well, is the milking barn. The pasture with the 3 cows are there. The black cow is named Penelope. The others are Tweed and Jim Jr. Moving across, and remember, recall that this pasture was originally a fruit orchard. That whole thing had rows and rows of fruit trees, apricots, apples, peaches, what have you. Then, of course, the ranch house. And there is a picture of Chet Locke standing right here where I am standing, looking over his ranch. Then the picnic area is that green patch, which was another pasture. The old corral is another pasture, which was probably used to raise alfalfa and other grasses for the livestock. This area over here is the parking lot for the Super Summer Theater. And you can just see that little brown structure, which is the stage for the Super Summer Theater. And way in the distance there, you can see the road coming into the ranch and the pay booth at the entrance. And that road winds around here. And on into the parking lot. Continue along the Overlook trail. We've reached the Overlook and now we're heading back down the trail. The red rock formation there represents the Calico Hills. The red rocks are in the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area, and you can hike around the rocks, you can do mountain climbing over there, and of course it's on the famous 13-mile loop that goes through the park. So this is the split in the trail. If you go this way, you go down towards the parking lot. If you go this way, you circle around towards the cemetery, I believe. Well, here's a view of where we were, right there on the peak of the Shinarump Formation. Watch out for that cholla. Before you know it, it will jump right off of that plant and into your leg. And we are headed back towards the parking lot. Once passing the steps, the trail's pretty easy. And one passes through a dense forest of desert flora. Let's see, we have cholla here, and behind that, creosote bush. We're also beginning to see plants like the brittle bush. Trail is going to descend down to the parking lot, to the conclusion of the Overlook Trail. Again, this park has so much to offer, yet it's not always well known to tourists. And even some of the locals come here for the first time, and they've been in Las Vegas for years and years, and they say, "Oh, I didn't know about this place." So these trails are family friendly. They aren't meant to tire you out or be dangerous or anything like that. It's just meant to come out here and have some family fun. Coming to the end of the Overlook Trail and to the parking lot. Now that's interesting. Little nest buried in the trees there, with the hole in it where probably some bird is living or lived. So we're just about at the end of the trail. And into the road. These symbols are not petroglyphs. These symbols represent the different brands of the 5 different owners of the ranch who actually had cattle. Starting from left to right, there is the Flying 5, which belonged to the original Wilson family. The K2 belonged to Willard George, the furrier of the stars. The double bar over O, or bar nothing, belonged to Chet Locke. The Diamond V, everybody knows, Vera Krupp. And finally, the T hanging H, or as the Howard Hughes people preferred, Hughes Tool. Sign showing the Overlook Trail.